independent states are not real living people.
We all have to ask ourselves.
What goes around comes. Sago, I'm Dale Montour. Most Aboriginal communities face the perpetual problems of substandard living conditions and an insufficient land base for economic development. They are all fighting for their inherent right to self-government to be recognized. And this community, Akwesasne, is no exception. It just has a few more unpleasant realities to face. It's a border community with its people living in 2 provinces and still others in the United States. The logistics of governing such a community, along with having to deal with so many other governments, has made life very difficult for this Mohawk community for a very long time. Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida, and Mohawk, all part of the same League of the Iroquois, which united these 5 separate nations into a confederacy. It was established to promote peace amongst these once quarreling peoples. The United States Constitution is modeled after the Iroquois Confederacy and its great law of peace. Modern-day Akwesasne is part of the Iroquois Confederacy. It straddles the Canadian and American international border. When the Confederacy was created, however, the Mohawk Nation had control and jurisdiction over their own territories. There was one government and one religion, that of the Longhouse. But from European contact onward, imposed borders, imposed systems of government, and broken treaties have left a once united people and territory deeply divided.
3 districts on the Canadian side of Akwesasne, with about 2,000 per district population. Cornwall Island, St. Regis, and Snai. So there's about 6,000 residing on the Canadian side of Akwesasne. Then there's about another 4,000, or just under, on the American side. So it's an international, that's what they call on the outside. Half the territory is in the States, the other half is in Canada, and the part that is in Canada, half of that is in Ontario, and the other half is in Quebec. And you've got about 80 miles of river territory that's part of the reservation. It has islands from 1,000 Islands to near Dallasville, Quebec. And international border zigzags in and out. And then you have the provincial boundaries. So some islands will fall on the Ontario, some islands will fall on the Quebec side, some will fall on the American side, and it just goes on. That pretty well completes a pretty giant puzzle of which Mohawks have never become accustomed to living under.
Mike Mitchell is Grand Chief of the 3 districts on the Canadian side. He presides over 12 elected chiefs. 4 are elected from each district. Then there's a tribal council in the U.S. with 3 chiefs, and a traditional council with 9 chiefs and 9 clan mothers. Those are the inside governments. But on the outside is the federal government of the United States and Canada, the state government of New York, and the provincial governments of Quebec and Ontario.
Most Mohawks view Akwesasne as a Mohawk singular community, divided by outside borders and barriers. And as much as we can, really trying to live a life that's less complicated than outsiders choose to make it. You know, try to simplify things down here. But it's not easy.
The government of Canada made it even harder for these Mohawks to stride the international border by failing to recognize the Jay Treaty. Signed between Britain and the new American government, this is one of its clauses. Nor shall any Indians passing or repassing with their own proper goods and effects of whatever nature pay for the same any impost or duty whatever. When a Mohawk man was charged with not paying duty on goods when crossing the border, he used as his defense the Jay Treaty. He was prosecuted because the federal government said that the terms of the Jay Treaty do not apply domestically. So basically, the Canada Customs Act takes precedence, and any Aboriginal resident moving goods across the border must pay duties.
We never broke that treaty, but that Jay Treaty, that treaty of Ken which reaffirmed it, stated in there that the Indians were obliged to cease making wars on the white man. You see, Mr. McGillip, when that treaty was broken, that meant that we must again have been at war with the white man. Because when you break a treaty, this is what it signifies. And it's supposed to show you we are still at peace. We didn't break our side. We didn't go to war yet.
One of the goods that has been moving across the border is cigarettes. To a traditionalist like Loran Thompson, who lives on the south side of the St. Lawrence River, it is the Canadian government who is breaking the law and not Mohawks when it confiscates the cigarettes.
Canada and the United States need cigarettes to generate tax monies so that it can have programs. Well, we needed cigarettes to do the same. We're a nation of people. Gahnawaga and Akwesasne are a part of one Mohawk nation. Ganasadaga also is a part of that same Mohawk nation. And the theft of our product coming from Akwesasne to Gahnawaga is illegal, international law. But Canada has the ear of its Canadians. So it's all right to confiscate in their words. But in our words, they're stealing our material, our product. When our people are transporting cigarettes, we have no border. We are North American Indians. Our territory is in Canada and the U.S. We don't have a border. My father told me that forever.
If you were Mohawk in Akwesasne and you look across the river, and over there or across the street, you could buy a pack of cigarettes for $1.25. And you go across the other side, which is now called Canada, and it costs, same pack will cost over here $5 to $7. You know, so there's a very big difference. It's very tempting. And for many people down here, they've got inflicted by this disease.
Chief Mitchell has been elected under the imposed antiquated band council system, and he's been trying to work within the Canadian system that has never been fair to Aboriginal people. As a member of the Longhouse, Loran Thompson has never believed in any outside system of government governing or interfering with these people's affairs. But what is evident to both leaders is the dismal economic situation of their communities. With virtually no land base for sustained economic development, they've had to watch while other governments make their millions on the cigarette industry.
Canada sends cigarettes to the States, tax-free, duty-free, tax-free, etc. You know, 5 years later, they know that most of it is all coming back in. It's brought in through Akwesasne. A community like this is prime target, and it has been. Nothing is done about it. So on that issue, I've had to ask around. There seems to be some obvious solutions other than have all these police around here, you know, and employing more people to do this specialized enforcement. And while generally you can look at that and say, they don't have to send them over there. They know it's all coming back. And if they want to send them over there, why don't they put the duty and the tax before it leaves so that there's no, you know, desire by anyone, there's no profit to smuggle them back in. That would resolve everyone's problem. But they don't do that. And I guess the manufacturers have a large say. They wield a big stick over Canada. And so they threaten them to say, if you do this and put these taxes down, we'll just move on to the States and we'll produce the cigarettes over there and you'll still have the same problem. So Canada is making their billions on cigarettes, okay? And the provinces, they put their billions, they make their billions on cigarettes and liquor and so forth. So they don't want to rock the boat. In the meantime, life is hell here in Akwesasne.
Cigarettes are a product that's produced in our country, in our hemisphere. And cigarettes is the first valuable thing, valuable commodity that the Europeans saw in this country and took back to Europe to trade for money, commerce, because we taught them how to plant it and how to use it. Cigarettes, tobacco, cigars, it's ours, it's our product. But we need to educate our own people to believing that it is our product. It is today manufactured by a non-Indian, but it still is our product. I can look at what our people are doing, and I can see how the people in uniform in Canada are robbing our people. Today, I mean, you hear in history how the white man robbed and stole from the Indian people. But that's happening today when a car is going to another community within the Mohawk Nation or the Confederacy. A person in uniform, or could be a plainclothesman carrying a bag, will pull you over and take $5,000, $10,000 worth of product from you. That's theft to us. And they're calling us outlaws.
Cigarettes are not the only thing in this Mohawk community which is controversial.
We went through the violence here in Akwesasne last year, and finally the reality seemed to sink in that this violence occurred because people were trying to identify some form of an economic development. And if some group were breaking the law or not abiding by whatever procedures the government had established, that was going to be the alternative.
Next. In September of 1990, in his opening speech to Parliament, Brian Mulrooney publicly stated that the Mohawk warriors are gun-wielding terrorists who threaten authorities, trade in contraband goods, intimidate law-abiding Mohawks, interrupt transportation, and destroy public property. To a member of the society, this is simply not the case.
I am constitutionally a part of the Substandard, or what's known to the Canadian public as the Warrior Society. Okay, Substandard is the people who are responsible to take care of our territory, our national security, and the interests of our people, to make sure that those all stay intact. And if it's the interests of our people to put up casinos, sell cigarettes, sell whatever, sell beadwork, and it's attacked by a foreign government, then our Substandard have to protect them.
The Mohawks living in the Mohawk Territory on the south side of the St. Lawrence did decide to build casinos, and they ran fairly smoothly without any outside interference. When the Mohawks decided to put slot machines into their gambling halls, it didn't sit too well with the state government, but they had a hard time justifying their reasons when practically every other gambling house in the country was allowed to have slot machines.
The federal government, the state government in New York had a problem with the Mohawks of Akwesasne opening casinos with slot machines. The casinos was a question, but the slot machine to the federal government of the United States and the state of New York was a really big problem to them. Our people in this community put it in place because it generated funds quickly. Okay? And it took root and it expanded into many different casinos. As time went on, those casino owners went to the government, and we have 3 governments in Akwesasne. And at that particular time, the governments were asking too much. They were going to bankrupt the businesses for what they were asking, the tobacco business too. And then they would not give accountability to the people. So the business people drew back, and then the community split.
No one on the Akwesasne Reserve has to declare war. It's already started.
They're about in the middle of the bridge now.
State police allege members of the Mohawk Warriors Society opened fire with automatic weapons on 2 barricades, manned by opponents of gambling on the reserve. An amateur photographer narrowly escaped without injury, but several people were wounded by ricocheting bullets during the midnight raids. The morning after, nothing was left of the barricades except the burned-out wreckage of several vehicles. Pro-gambling factions claimed victory.
Our warriors are still being encouraged not to lift a hand, as we say, against another Mohawk. And that's why nobody's been hit.
Statements like that have led to angry confrontations with gambling opponents.
Let me tell you something, John. I'm not very proud of you.
Both sides accuse the other of provoking the latest outbreaks of violence.
Out of this violence came the tragic deaths of 2 Mohawk men.
Are the outside governments to blame for what has happened? Are we to blame for what has happened? The answer is yes to both questions. We should have never allowed ourselves to go that far that we would have to fight ourselves. And what we had to fight over came from outside. And the sad reality is that my grandfather had always talked about that the white men had a plan to really divide us. And in Akwesasne, we had always fought against those divisions. But for somehow, when quick money schemes like that come in, you forget who you are. And you jump on different lines, and people sided up. When gambling hit, it hit awful hard, and it created deep divisions. And it's something today, a year later, it is still very evident, and it is a very frustrating process to try to rebuild your community.
So what it has come down to in this torn and hurt community is what the rest of the Aboriginal communities across the country are asking for. Self-determination with their own institutions, and that includes justice. The Canadian justice system simply doesn't work for Aboriginal people. 3 justice inquiries have proved that. It is time to take control of their own lives, they say, and to start a healing process that will bring the people of the Mohawk community on both sides of this imposed border back together again.
I have a council right now. We went to elections this summer, and it is perceived that there's a split on council that is equal support for pro-gamblers, pro-smugglers, or whatever entrepreneurs you can call them. Then you have a situation where people are against it. In reality, if the story could be told, is that we don't look at it like that. And we can look at it like that. I think we've got to focus in beyond that and say, what does this really mean? And as a community, we're to rebuild. We're going to have to not take sides any longer on what has divided us, but look at the core. Where is all this coming from? And if it has to stop, then Canada should stop. If it's going to continue, then the Mohawks got to create their own laws that deals with that will protect all of us.
We are a free people, maybe small. Population-wise, Akwesasne is only 10,000 people. Ganawag is only 6,000 people. Maybe 50 in all. Very small population. But we own legally an awful lot of land in Canada, United States. And we are a nation of people. But our people have to believe that, so that we can sit at the table with Canada and the United States and say, let's make an agreement on free trade. You have one with the United States? Well, let's you and I make one now. That's all. National. International. Our people have to get beyond. I don't like you. I don't like how you part your hair, so I'm not going to agree with anything you say. That's our downfall. And those governments around us just use that to the most. Split, divide, and conquer.
As you've seen, the community of Akwesasne has been through some very rough times. The internal conflict within the community, coupled with outside government interference, has caused a lot of pain. But the conflict is no longer the issue here. Resolving it is. The Skenagoa Peace Center was established to help promote peace, harmony, and unity within the community, to begin a healing process, and to inform the community about approaches to conflict resolution. As we found out, the program has been very successful.
The aftermath of the crisis in 1990, the leadership felt that it was necessary to put a program that would allow the community to come together, to come back together, to rebuild, and it was accepted by a few people within the community, and from that few people, the center became established.
The Skenagoa Peace Center officially opened on October 9th of 1990. Jolene Adams is the director. The focus of the center is rebuilding relationships.
Skona means peace. Skanagoa means big peace or much peace. The word, the title is very, very appropriate because it is also a Mohawk salutation. Very often you meet somebody, a friend of yours, and you greet them with Skanagoa. And I think what we're doing here is a greeting to something that for the future, something better for the future.
The Peace Center has been established now for over a year. Have you been able to determine its success?
There's been much success. There are people here that are now willing to work together, that are willing to discuss, and what the program does is to promote dialogue and respect each other's views and to come to a consensus on how we work as a community, to work collectively as a community. And the only way that can be done is through dialogue and communication.
For his part, Grand Chief Mike Mitchell has just signed a $25 million economic development agreement with the government. It took 5 years of frustrating negotiations to do it. But despite all of the elements working against this community, Mike Mitchell truly believes that there's a future for his people.
If you could put all that aside and say, because of Aboriginal rights, because of our location, because of free trade, because of all these things, could we do it any other way? And the answer is most definitely. You can put the kind of industries down here that don't pollute. You can provide the kind of skills that people want to have for long-term lasting jobs. And you can use what has been a disadvantage all this time into an advantage. Will we ever get an opportunity to do that? I don't know. The laws in Canada work against us as much as they're supposed to protect us. And right now it's a stumbling block. That's where we're at.
True to his traditional beliefs, Loran Thompson sees a future where his people will finally be recognized as a separate nation with its own laws and its own government.
Right now they're pushing self-government. That's a play on words. You're not going to be self-government. You're going to be Canada's Indian. Whose constitution are you going to be following? Are you going to be under? Once you become a Canadian, your treaties are no more good. You're now a Canadian. Self-government, that's what it's going to do. And many of our elder spokespeople are pushing self-government, entrenched into the Canadian Constitution. We have no business in Canada's Constitution. No business at all.
That's our program for this week. Thanks for joining us. I'm Gail Montour. Onigiwahi, Sego de Deste.